Hi, I'm Chris, also known as That French Bloke. In this video, we're going to talk about the Mamiya 645, a medium format camera from a make that I really like, Mamiya. This video will not be a review per se, but I am going to show you all the parts of the Mamiya 645 and explain to you how to test it and how to operate it, how to use it. That will include like changing the battery, charging the film, using the Prism, taking the camera apart and making it back together. Everything that you need if you want to buy a 645 Mamiya camera will be there. And also, for those of you who would like to make money with cameras, I will, at the end of this video, so stay till the end, but I will tell you a little secret of mine on how you can make good money. I'm talking about $700 by a little trick that you need to know about this camera. So watch the video to the end and I'll tell you more after this. The Mamiya 645 had been released in 1975 and was for sale up to 1990. This is the first version of the Mamiya 645. It was followed by the 645 Super, which was a new generation of manual focusing camera, and then the 645 Pro, which is an autofocus camera. Mamiya do not make cameras anymore. This make doesn't exist anymore. This legacy still exists today with a lift system which is based on a body of a Mamiya 645 Pro. But in this video, we're going to concentrate on the first generation, 1975 to 1990, the real coarse, I would say, medium format camera. So this camera is a medium format camera. That means that the film it uses is bigger than the film used by 35mm camera. In 35mm camera, the picture taken is 24mm by 36mm. On the 645 Mamiya, as the name implies, the image on the film is 6cm by 45mm or 60mm by 45mm if you prefer. So it's bigger, although it's the smallest format of the medium format. You will find some other camera. Mamiya have made a lot of camera in medium format. They are very, very famous for their medium format camera, and they have 6x6 camera, which is 6cm by 6cm. You have the RB67, which was a 6x7 camera, and you also had the Mamiya Press, that depending on the back you put there, you could go up to 6x9cm, so quite a large negative on those cameras. But here, 645, which is great for as an introduction to medium format. It's allow for like a better quality, shorter depth of field, while still being able to take, I think it's about 20 pictures on a roll of 120 film. So it's more economical than using a bigger format camera. I have two bodies here. One is the standard 645. The other one, it's an evolution of it, which is a 645 1000s. You also need to know that there were a 45G, or more exactly 45J, sorry, which was for Junior, which was a stripped down version of the 45. We will talk about the differences between those three when we see all the functionality of the camera. So let's take a look at the camera. So what we have here, 645, Mamiya 645 1000S. And here I have a second body, which is just a standard 645. There are other differences with those cameras. Obviously this one doesn't have a lens attached. This one have an 80mm 2.8, which was a standard lens for the kit. It also exists 80mm 1.9. We're going to talk about that one later on. And what you can see as well is the difference on the top. This one has what we call the method prism, so you can use this camera a bit like a modern camera, where you will measure the light and it will give you the correct exposure. This one, you need to use a cell that's separate from the camera. This difference, it's not necessarily difference for the type of camera, it's really because it's really an option, okay? Any of those camera can come with different prism, depending on your need, whether you want it metered or not, and there were all a range of metered prisms. It can come as well with a chest viewfinder. Personally, I really like those, although it's not common on the 645. This is because of the format. If you want to use portrait, you then have to put this camera on its side. It's not like the RB67 that had a rotating back, so you have to move it, and I mean, you can't use camera on that side like that if you have a chest viewfinder. Let's review together what are the different parts of the camera and how you can take the camera apart. First thing, we're going to start with the lens, which is the most useful thing to know. To release the lens, you have to press this little button here, and when you do so, you can then turn the lens and remove it, okay? And to put it back on, it's quite simple. You've got a red dot here, a red dot there. You align those two, and you just turn it. You can see that here I'm using this camera has a metered prisms. You see that the system for communicating the aperture to the prism is really similar to the one that's used on Nikons, where you've got those little rabbit here, there, that should encapsulate that prong. But unlike Nikon cameras, you do not have to put the aperture on 5.6 or on any set aperture before removing the lens. You can put it where you want, and when you put the lens on, you will see that it's designed so that the prong will fall into those ears automatically, and if it's not, you can just move it and it will get there. So that's very, very convenient. You do not have to do like the classic double twist of the Nikon camera either. Okay, so let's take everything apart. I'm taking the lens. Next, we mentioned you have a choice of different viewfinder, and you can choose whichever you want, and you can have several viewfinders for your body and change them when you see fit. To take a viewfinder off, you need to I've triggered the camera. To take a viewfinder off, you need to basically twist that little button and then press it. So you twist it so that the little dot should go in front of the little white dot should go in front of that little white dot, and when that is done, you can press it and you can remove the viewfinder. Okay, I'll put it back. To put it back, you just press it on and it will lock into place. Okay, and to remove it, you twist and you press, and then off it goes. Here we have a matte screen with a split image for helping you to focus in the middle of the focusing screen, and you can remove just by lifting it by those little screw. Make sure you don't put your finger on it. Up, there is some stuff on it, and that's it. And here you can see the mirror, because I've triggered the camera and the mirror went up. Those camera, unlike many medium format camera, do not have a back that you can change. The back is included in the camera. That's something to change later on, but the first generation you can't swap your back. However, you have a film insert in here. I'm showing you. To open that door, you need to press here that little piece of metal. You press it, and once you've done that, you can move this one in, like following the arrow, and then it open. So that's where you put your film, and to do that you need to remove the insert here. To remove the insert, you need you have two things here that you need to press. If you press them and pull, it comes. Okay, so here it's 120 insert. You also have 220 insert if you want to use 220 films. However, nowadays 120 film is still widely available, 220 isn't. So make sure if you buy a camera that you have a 120 insert. You can have several insert in film insert if you want. That will allow you to load the camera quicker on the field, but you cannot change the film midway like you could do if the back were interchangeable. That. So we've got our different part here. Prism, you see several models of Prism. Film insert, lens, focusing screen, and body. Obviously there are many lenses as well that you can have. You have prime lenses as well as zoom. If you're used to Mamiya cameras like the RB67 or the C220, 330, or this range of Mamiya camera, the focusing is not done in the lens, it's done in a bellow that's included in the camera, and by turning a button you expand the front of the camera. This one is more classic, where the focusing ring is part of the lens. Last thing that I forgot to show you is also the winder. You can remove it just by pressing that little prong here, and then you go backward and you can remove the winder. That is important because should you want to buy a motor for the camera, the motor will screw there. It's a block that goes underneath the camera, and it will also attach here to wind the camera up after you take every picture. Okay, so that's why you need to remove it. Although, as you can see, there are several types of winder as well. And to put it back, same thing, you put that white thing in front of that red knob and you press on it, and it's done. Okay, quite simple. Okay, now let's put everything back together so that I can show you how we can use it. As you saw, I've triggered the camera by mistake earlier, and the mirror went up and it didn't go back. And I could see as well when I took the camera apart that the obturator was left wide open. This is typical of a camera that don't have enough battery in. This has an electronic shutter, and this shutter needs a battery to work properly. This behavior of having the mirror staying up is exactly the same one that you have on a Nikon FE, for example, where if you don't have a battery, it does exactly the same thing. The little red button that you see here is the battery tester. When you press on it, this little thing should eliminate red. Here there's nothing, so there's no battery in this one. If I do the same thing on that body, oh, it doesn't. Oh yeah, no, sorry, it's illuminated green. So I've got a green light here, so it's okay. But this one doesn't have one. So let's see how to change the battery. It's very simple. You have a little door here for the battery. You push it that way. Well, you push that lock toward the lens, and the battery door pop open, and you can see there it's empty. It's a 6-volt battery. The battery type is it's 4LR44. So this is the type of battery, 4LR44, and you just put it in the, let's make sure that I put it in the right way. Yeah, the minus prong goes that way, plus that way. Okay, here we are, and if I close Now it says the battery is okay and I can use it again. Okay. So in this camera, this lever does two things. It advances the film and it cocks up the shutter as well. So it's not like on the RB67 where you have the action has to be done twice. This one you have only one lever for both action. On this side you have your counter for the number of pictures you've taken. This lever here is to take multiple shots on the same piece of film. In normal operation it should be up like that. Okay, but the problem is because I don't have any film, it goes forever because it tries to advance the film and it can't. So if you want to test your camera without film, you really have to have it on multi, and then okay, it cranks and you can test your camera. This lever here is MU, it's for mirror up. Okay, should you need to have your mirror up for some reason, then that little lever let you move it up. For your information, this little sprung here, and you've got another one here, they are for attaching a strap if you want to carry the camera on your neck or on your shoulder. To take a picture, you have two triggers on the camera. You have one here and one there. On the lower version, the 645J, you only have this one. This one has been removed. And on this trigger, you see that you've got a safety. If you put it, let's crank it. Okay, if you put that little red dot in front of the white dot, then you cannot use any of the triggers. So that's convenient if you want to carry your camera in the bag. On the 1000S, you have two commands on the front of the camera that are not present on lower one. This is the Selftimer here and the depth of field preview there. So let's see the Selftimer. So you crank up your camera, you set your Selftimer, and when you're ready, you push this and it will wait a bit and then take the picture normal. Okay. Depth of field preview, that basically it's this little level here, and what it does, it, you see, can you see the inside of the lens? When you move that lever up, it closes your aperture so that you can see the effect of your aperture on the depth of field. Okay, it will go dark as well. When you do that, it will go darker than normal, obviously, inside the viewfinder. One thing that is important to test when you buy a camera or when you're about to sell it is the shutter. What you want basically is make sure that it works at any speed. So 1000. Okay, and what I tend to do is I go through all the speed one by one, and obviously you can't really make sure that, for example, 1/16 of a second is 1/16 of a second, but with a bit of use you kind of know whether it sounds right or not, and you also can judge evolution. You can see that the higher I go, the longer, you can hear it's the longer it takes. And if that progression doesn't doesn't appear, then that means that you've got an issue with your camera. So that's half a second, now 1 second. Okay, it sounds like 1 second, 2 seconds, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to do all the other one because they take quite a while, but if you want to test your camera properly, you should. B, it's always a good idea to test the B pose as well. Okay, it works fine. This position here with the red dot, that means that you are not using the body of the camera to set the speed, but you are using that speed ring here to set the speed. So when you are using a method Prism, you should set this ring here to the red, and then you can change your speed on the Prism itself, which is good. It's not. I know that, for example, the RB67, you had to change the speed or set the speed correctly on your Prism and then report it here, which is a pain. So that's good that it's integrated on this camera. So how do we use the Prism? It's simple. Once again, to switch it on, you press this button and it's on for about 30 seconds, I believe. Once it's done, you can choose your aperture, you can choose your speed, and you will see some little diode inside the viewfinder that will tell you whether you are under or overexposed. If it's green, it's okay, you can take the picture. Okay. One thing that is important to do is to test the speed here, because it's not enough just, you can see, it's not enough to just check the aperture. Here I should be 1/15 of a second, and to me it sounds like 4 seconds or 2 seconds. So, and if I go on 4, no, I should be on a quarter of a second, and it's take 8 seconds maybe, yeah. So if I go second, yeah, and that is not half a second, and that is an either. So my guess is that someone took that apart, and when they put it back on, they didn't put that ring in the correct position. That's something that I will have to address. I can tell that, yeah, that's been taken off, I can tell. Yes, one thing I forgot as well, it's obviously depending on the film you put in your camera, you need to set the ASR here to make sure that you meter properly. Now, last thing, loading the film. 120 film look like this. They normally come like in an airtight pocket, but once you took it out, that's how it looks, and it should have a little piece of paper here keeping it closed. This film here is a film that I use. It's a bad film, but I use to test camera with. So what you want to do is take your insert on, and here you can see that you have an issue, because you should have a roll there. When you buy a camera, make sure that it comes with an empty roll of film here, because those film come on a plastic roll, and what's happened is when you use it, it will get away from that one and onto the other one, and once the film is finished, you just close it on the old roll of film, and that is what you take to your lab or to get processed. And then you move your empty thing here. So here I don't have one. Let's go and fetch one. It's always a good idea to get some spares when you can, so that if you get hold of a camera that doesn't have one, you can use them. So here is how it works. You put it here in its location and there. And what you do the same thing here. with the film, and then you take the paper here, and you should put that little tongue here inside this slot there. Okay. And then once it's done, okay, you can start to unload, well, to roll your things. And you see here it said start, and you should see a black thing coming here and here. Here you put the start in front of there, then you put your insert back in the camera, and now I can move that lever off from multi because I want my film to advance. Okay, and you see it made a few turns, and then now I can take my first picture. Okay, and now it works fine. Okay, and I'm going to do something that you should never do, but that's a test film in it. And you see what I have here is I have the sensitive area of the, sorry, what you can see here is I have the sensitive area of the film ready to be exposed. Okay, so that's how to use the camera. One little word of advice: you can see that the shutter uses some fabric curtains. Okay, that's quite common, no problem with that, except that make sure that you don't leave your mirror up. Okay, because what it does here, if you have the mirror up for a long time, and say you let your camera angle to the sun, if it's like it is here, focus to infinity, what it does, the sun ray will burn a dot on your curtain, and it will make a tiny hole, and then you will have a light leak, which is not something you want. Another word of warning about this camera: I've put back this prism that doesn't measure the light, and I left this on this position. If I take a picture, here's what's happened. I don't know if you heard, but what's happened is that the shutter opened and didn't close. Okay, the mirror is up, the shutter is open and never closed. Never leave your camera like that, because it will drain your battery. When you're like that, it's using electricity and your battery will just go. So never ever leave your camera on that dot without a prism. Make sure that you are not in the position, because the battery will go. So put it in B or whatever you want, but make sure it doesn't stay open like that in order to save your battery. However, the documentation states that the battery should be good for 100,000 pictures. Those are supposed to be silver oxide battery. I think modern battery, the one I've put in, I bought it for but the cheapest I could find on Amazon, and I'll be very surprised if there are 400,000 shutter actuation. Obviously, if you're using a metal prism, you will use the battery more. Having said that, there are several technologies of metal prism. Okay, this one is what they call a PD prism. You've got a PDS prism that have a battery for the working of the light metering inside the prism, and the battery is then located there, and it's a LR44 that you need for those prisms, but this one doesn't need one. Also, when you buy a camera like this, do take care of the mirror inside your prism. Those ones are, this one's very clean, okay, and it's bright, it's good. This one, as you can tell it's got a little shock here, and you can see that here a bit of glass has gone, and also inside the prism you can see it's a bit broken, the mirror, although it doesn't show much when you are using the camera, so it's not a big deal, but take care of that. Any shock on here will mean that the mirror might be broken. But what it's very common on those prisms is that those mirrors, they turn yellow and you end up with a dark viewfinder. It's not something you want, so ask before buying, make sure that the viewfinder is clear. Last thing I forgot, I just realized I forgot using flash. It's something I forgot to mention. Using flashes with this camera, it's quite easy. You have a hot shoe here, which means that you can use any type of electronic flash you want. Okay, and it's protected by a little thing, and here you have two little sockets for connecting flash as well. Why two? Because you can use two different type of flash. X is for electronic flashes, and FP is for magnesium flashes, which I don't think anyone uses it anymore, but hey, you know, the difference between the two is the synchronism. Basically, magnesium flashes take a tiny bit of time to flash, so they need to be triggered a fraction of a second before the electronic flash need to be triggered. That's why there's two. Something that's quite common on older cameras to have those two different sockets. So that's it for the operation of the Mamiya 645 here. In the introduction, I promised that I will explain to you how you can easily make a few $100 with those cameras, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. And the secret is here in the lens. Most of those kits came with an 80mm 2.8 as an aperture, like this one. However, there were another 80mm lens that were available. It's an 80mm 1.9, and the 80mm 1.8 lens is an excellent lens. It's got a very good reputation, which means that while this lens might be worth 150 euros, a lens, an 80mm 1.9 will be worth about 600 euros. And what it means that sometimes you have on the market people that will sell a kit like that with a 80mm 1.9 and will not realize that their lens is special or different, and will sell it at the same price they saw for kit with a 80mm 2.8. A kit like this, 80mm 2.8, you can get it now for about 500 euros, I would say. It used to be cheaper, but the price have gone up recently. But so that means you buy a kit for 500 euros, you sell the lens for 600, and you can sell the rest of the body without the lens for another 400 euros. So you buy something for 500 euros and you make 1,000 for it. So 500 euros benefit just by knowing this little piece of information that not everybody does. Some photographers know it, that's why they are ready to pay really the price for the lens, but not every sellers know it. And here is an opportunity for you to make money with those cameras. Last thing as well, if you have a camera like that and that's sleeping in the bottom of your cabinet, do not hesitate to sell it. At the moment they are hot. A few years ago you could buy those cameras for like 300, and now they go 500-600. So the price is going up. I'm not sure they're going to carry on going up like that, so maybe it's a good time to sell them. I know that a couple of years ago I bought a kit with 2 bodies and 3 lenses, including that 80mm 1.9, and I've paid 300 euros for that. So the price are really gone up. If you have some that are sleeping in your shelves, sell them. However, if you're a photographer and want to play with such camera, I would advise you that you do. So they are great cameras. It's a great entry point into the medium format camera. It's lots of fun, and you can really take nice pictures. the look and feel is different from a 35mm camera. It's also different from a digital camera, obviously. So go for it. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you find it useful. If I forgot anything or if I said anything that was wrong, it can happen. Please do not hesitate to write a comment and tell me where I went wrong, or tell me what you want to know, and I will make my best to answer you. And I'll see you next time. Oh, and last time before I forget, please, 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 do not hesitate to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, press on the bell notification if you don't want to miss any of my videos, and really you shouldn't miss them. And I'll see you next time.